Good afternoon. Mayang hapon. Mayang ganyang hapon sa inyong atanan. Ako ang akong kalipay. Ako ang kadungganan nga gihatag kanako sa Ateneo de Manila. Uy, sa'yo ko lang pansala. Ateneo de Davao University. Aron mo bisita kaniyang tanan o ulo istorya, magsubay-subay sa mga nangahitabo karon sa atong nasod. Akong giingnan si Myong nga actually tulo na kapo ang akong invitation sa lain-lain na Ateneo. Unya lain sa Manila, sa ibang lugar. Pero sa akong desisyon, akong gipili ang Ateneo di Davao. Tungod kay July pa man ilang invitation, ulit gini sila kaayo, sila palibag, sige po sila kadala o sulat. Dili lang na, kay first come first serve man. Dugay na po nakabisita din sa Ateneo de Davao. The last time was during the 1980s pa, when I was President of Freedom from Death Coalition. Bao nga pag-abot na ko gabi, wa na ko kailan sa Ateneo de Davao. So, daghang kaayong salamat sa inyong imbitasyon. Akong nakita na kadaghanan sa audience nato karon, lain-lain ng mga community, uban ng mga university, apel lang akong University of the Philippines. Wala rin taga Siliman, kay Leo man, mahalang pasahe. Going to Davao. Kanya, lain-lain ng mga civil society organizations o mga organisasyon sa government. Kanya, importante po nga niya ang atong mga local officials, ilang na ang mga officials sa barangay. Karon, ining topic nga hulidang ang port. Dili ako may nagpili ni ini ang nagbutan ni ang University Research Council. Ilan akong isugo. O niya, pa sila ipadala na unsay objectives. So, I have to really, as a good academic, I have to follow the objectives that have been set up by the council and the center of Myong. So, palihog yung mag-umpisa na ta. Ako usang ipagkita ninyo ang kuan, ang objectives nga ihatag ka na ko. Yung objectives. Ayan na. Oo. So, makita na to nga una, I should give a comprehensive, so man, asa ko matapos ng comprehensive, no? Update on the pork barrel, and the people's movements to keep a watchful eye on the prosecution of the alleged plunderers. Ikaduha, present a critical analysis. Muna kung gusto kay critical. Ipuna ko na sa lahat sila minipili. Ilang kong gisugo, kinalang critical analysis. But then academics always present critical analysis. Dinibuti pasabot nga negative, pero kanang objective ka. Objective niya, kanang maayong pagkauna-una. On the Supreme Court ruling on the DAP. Suduhan ni ang PDAP o ang DAP. Lahi man ang PDAP, ini mo'y official pork barrel. Ang DAP, lahi ni bago ni na animal nga na invento. No? And then the President's defenses vis-a-vis public finance and management. So atong i-test ang PDAP and DAP against vis-a-vis ingon sila public finance and management. So kung na pamati nga ma-offend, ang pasulan nimo ang Ateneo de Davao kasi sila lang Kanya, ang third objective is to explore the proposed tools for transparency and accountability, namely the FOI bill, kabaluman mo ani freedom of information, and the people's initiatives. Karon, tungkol kay comprehensive ang kaayon ni, kanya comprehensive niyang lecture ang inyong i-expect. I thought that I would divide my presentation in two parts. Kaya niya, pagkatulog niya ako niya, hindi ito ba kaya niya auditorium, kanya bugnaw, kanya inits gawa, kanya alamin inyong pagkaon sa inyong lunch. So, very conducive na to lalam you to a lullaby. Kanya, mura na niya lalabay ang akong speech, no? So, I will divide it in two parts. I'll take care of part 1 and 2 first. and then the reactors can make their reactions, and I will answer. And then I will proceed to part 3. By the way, ako mag-lecture ko, magtindog ko kayo, makita na ko inyong naong, nakita na ako, nakatulog na ba mo? Piyong-piyong na ba ang inyong mga mata niya? You communicate whether you are able to take in what I am saying or not. That's why I always make adjustments. So, okay. Now, I also thought, kasi as academic, I am from University of the Philippines, and then I'm from the University of the Philippines, and at the same time, I chair Silliman University, which is a very good, excellent terms with the various Ateneos. I should approach it as an academic. Yeah, muna nga, before I go into all the scandalous and the juicy chika about PDAP and DAP, I will make a very quick review because I understand there are people from business and public administration, there are people from Mindanao, of what public finance is all about. Because this is about public finance. No? So very, very quick review lang. Kabalo naman mo ani. Agi mo ani sa Economics 11 ninyo 50 years ago. Or 10 years ago, or 20 years. But very quickly, harap makuha ninyo ang context ng inyong mga desisyon po. Kaya sa DAP. No? One, there is such a thing as what is said as the public finance cycle. Oo. Pero primero, usap, kung paan sa pumubalik kong karyon, kanang what is public finance? Oo. Daghan kayong definition kung sa public finance, pero sa ako, simple lang na. O niya, even the textbooks say it very simply. Public finance is the inflow, musulod ang financial resources, ikan ka natin tanan. Kitang tanan nga gabayad o fees, kitang gabayad o lisensya, gabayad o value-added tax, income tax, licenses, everything. The financial resources are coming from us, inflow. Ang outflow is goods and services coming from the government. Government processes those financial resources and converts them. It's actually input-output analysis and converts these into services. And for the attainment, and I'd like to emphasize why we have public finance as distinguished from private finance, is because we have public objectives. It's not private objectives, it's not dynastic objectives, it's for public objectives. No? So in the case of developing countries, ang tawag na to ano, developmental goals. Now, what is fiscal administration, public fiscal? Ang broader field is public finance. Ano na po? Very simple. Inflow of kwarta. Gigan ka na itong tanan, whether we are aware of it or not. Because when you ride your bicycle, you drink your coffee, you make your gimmick, and you buy your cell phone, you are paying taxes, no? And all that, licenses. Unya, ang services, mubalik, ang government mo ay nag-transform ini. No. So what is public fiscal administration? Public fiscal administration is the formulation of fiscal policy. Kanang paghimo o polisiya sa tinagalog sa policy. Kung kayo balog ibisoy magkukain na po. Oo. Sa patakaran, no? Segni siya tingalis policy. Implementation of policy related to taxes, related to expenditures, and because of taxes, di man yun ego sa expenditures related to borrowing, and finally, to accountability. Why do we have accountability? It's because it's our money. It's not their money to spend as they please. It's not their money to decide as they please to whom to give it, because it belongs to all of us. All of these activities take place within the framework of the Constitution, which we always teach our students, and all of you who went to school 50 years ago were always taught that that is the fundamental law of the land and is the basis of all subsequent laws, rules, and regulations. And anything, whether it is a local government or a barangay, or a government office, any decision they make will always be tested against constitutionality. No. So that's it. Now, what is the so-called public finance cycle? Kaya mo yung ingon nila nga, adunay public finance cycle. Una, is the formulation of fiscal policy itself. Ina yung mga desisyon. Pananglitan, ang una din nga maghimo sa fiscal policy, ang executive side. Naa sila'y Development Budget Coordinating Committee, naa sila'y Fiscal Policy Committee. Mag-decide sila pananglitan what level of GDP growth do they want and how much will government spend to achieve this particular level of growth. Where will these resources be coming from and how will these resources be spent? And this is called fiscal policy. And a major actor in the formulation of fiscal policy, of course, is Congress. Executive proposes the fiscal policy, starting from the plan of NEDA, and then you go to the Development Budget Coordination Committee. The national budget is formulated. It is submitted to the President. President recommends it to Congress. Congress, as the co-equal, I will not say the second branch of government, the co-equal branch of government appropriates and approves the budget into law. Now, so that's the formulation of fiscal policy. And then the second phase of the public finance cycle, of course, now, na-approve ng budget, it doesn't mean if you have a 2.606 trillion peso budget for 2006, it's already there na naka-imbak na sa treasury na kung ano, puno na yung tibok building of 2.606 trillion, kolektahon pa na. So you have to go into taxes and revenue administration. Dili lamang ang pagkolekta, kundi ang pag-administer sa pagkolekta. Okay, isa sa mga nasod na pinakataas ang cost of collection per peso of revenue. So, ang administrative cost is also considered. Kunya, ikatulong, ito na akong giingon, resource allocation and budgeting. Kung maingon ang fiscal policy group nga, we need 2.606 trillion, then you have to see how that 2.606 trillion is going to be allocated and divided. And as I said, because no country that we know of, unless nakibalo tingali mo niya inyong kontudluan, o ako kaibalo nasod nga ang iyang kita, dako kay sa iyang gasto. Kaya kaswerte ko daan nga nasura, no? Hindi kaibalo kung saan na nila na ilang kwarta, kaya kaawas na ilang kwarta. Maybe you think Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia does a lot of things as well, no? And then, accountability. Ganina i-explain, and I think that was an excellent definition of governance ni Myong kanina. And that's exactly what it is. Use your power to deliver service, to convert resources into services for the people. And the last characteristic of governance is accountability. Kaya na din ha, ang ingon nato na public participation. This is also my addition. When you talk governance, you don't talk government alone. Governance always has public participation. Otherwise, you just call it government. That's a major characteristic. And then you have regularity and predictability. Kanang mga laws, kanang mga regulations are expected to be stable, dili atras abante. So mapipredict sa citizens, pananglitan, o makasala ka, hebelo ka nga, you will be fine. Dili kayo makasala ka, mahangyo pa ka. No? O depende kin sa imong kaila. No? So predictable. The third, of course, as I said, is transparency. And the fourth characteristic, of course, finally, is accountability. And these are generally accepted aspects of governance and is taught to every single undergraduate and graduate student of public administration. Memoryado yun na back and forth is drilled into their heads. And each characteristic is very, very important. Now, karon, unsa man yung budget process, very, very quickly. I'm sorry I have to go through this, you must be bored to death because you all know all of that already, but sometimes we have to be reminded. Budget preparation, ang himo sa budget, ang executive, siya ang propose. Ang ga-approve sa budget is Congress. That's what you call balance of power. Ang ga-implement, ang executive. So they have their particular jobs. Ang accountability is led by the agencies of accountability, led by the Commission and Audit. There are other agencies of accountability at the local level, at the agency level, and so on and so forth. Not in the books. Ako ay nagpuno ni Ine because this is the generally accepted budget process. I was taught this in the 1960s when I was taking a public finance. I looked at the books again, current books, current teaching, Maugi Hapon, this is the budget process. It's taught in Ateneo, it's taught everywhere else, no? So in addition to preparation, appropriation, implementation, accountability, wala sa libro para sa ako because it only came out last year, 2012, this issue, budget adjudication. This is the very first time that on a national scale, on a constitutional scale, a particular aspect of the budget has been questioned and petitioned. And this is budget adjudication by the judiciary. And I hope it will not stay there for long, kaya na decide naman on that. No? I already said that the legal basis of the budget is the Constitution, existing budget laws, rules, and regulations, the Appropriations Act. Ang importante, how many of you have seen the Appropriations Act? How many of you have seen the National Expenditure Program, the budget for expenditures and sources of funding? Ang national budget nato will fill a medium anak kadako nga maleta kaning iyang mga volumes lamang. Unang wala ko dada kay mo, overweight niya ako kan maluhay po ko sa paagi na di Davao kay the budget documents alone are already very substantial. But the General Appropriations Act is over 1,000 pages. One thing which you do not notice and which many people don't notice is the fact that the General Appropriations Act is not a mere listing of programs, projects, and how much they will cost. Or what is the budget of the ND, what is the budget of social welfare, what is the budget of the Department of Agriculture. It also contains these special provisions. And the special provisions are very, very long, how to implement the budget. And the special provisions contain the definition of terms which are used in the budget. And one and the most important, which is not read at all by many of our servants. Kaya di ba ni mga congressmen, ato pa na sila mga servants, no? Kita may mga bossing-bossing. Oo. One of these days, kung mag-field trip ang mga bata sa Manila to visit. You should try to visit the house of the servants, of our servants. Visit the house in Malacanang, the servants' quarters. And you check on your servants. And when you visit one house, you will see that some of them are sleeping, some of them are gossiping, and while the speaker is talking, they are turning their tables, and horror of horrors eating. And I don't know if they're making ligaw also. So the appropriations law, bear in mind, contains the special provisions. And it contains the definition of savings. What is savings? What is expenditure? Okay. Now, to the first order of Ateneo de Davao, that is the introduction. Introduction para na. You have to be ready and your minds have to be kept awake on that. Ang tanong nila, where did the realign PDAF go? Is in 2014, 2013, i-declare ang PDAF as unconstitutional in 2013. And when it was declared unconstitutional, it was applicable to the 2014 budget. So the question is, sa 2014 budget, naa pa ba si Porky? Oo. Naa pa ba ang atong pigsty? Oo. Naa pa ba ang atong pig farm? Oo. So where did the realign PDAF go? When PDAF was declared as unconstitutional. This is a separate decision and this is import. There's also a definition of what PDAF is. It is a very, very well researched, very long decision. What Congress did, kasi PDAF, ang value sa PDAF is 25.4 billion pesos of PDAF, which is the pork for the congressmen and the senators. Ang gihimo sa mga congressmen, when they passed 2014, gihimo nila, wala na kung sa 2014 budget, directly gibalhin nila sa executive agencies. Ibahin-bahin. O niya, ang mga congressmen, na sila, parte-parte na nila, ang mga senators. So, how much? 3.193 billion for Department of Health, assistance for indigent patients, etc. 4 billion for the DSWD. This is your pork, ha? Nagibalahin na, mura ba o born again? Nagi-atado, yalayan na ang itsura. Dati nga may sungay, mura na angel's wings, no? For the benefit na of the people. No? DSWD, 4 billion. O niya, Commission on Higher Education. This will be of interest to you. Anyway, you can always ask for a copy of my presentation later on. Unta, dilin nyo i-virus ang akong laptop. Ang CHED, one of the biggest, 4 billion to CHED alone for additional scholarships, in addition to the regular budget of CHED. Okay. Ang Department of Labor is 2 billion. Ang DPWH, which all of us adore and which all of us love, ang mga kalsada, ang mga taytayan, etc. 7 billion all in all. So, utroho na ako, no? DPWH, 7.3 billion, DOH, 3.1 billion, DSWD, 4 billion, DOLE, 2 billion, Apilantes, CHED, 4 billion. Ang total ni Ene, moabot o 25.6 billion. Kaya kami naglibog mo sa among research. Kaya ang pork, iba lang man 25.4 billion lang man. Kaya may mga turo bitaw ng difference. Kaya ka ng to, kay 200,000 man na. Oo. Dako man po nga difference. 246,000 ang difference. Muna nga, in the process of conversion, dako man siya. Dako man siya hinoon. Oo. So, that's where PDAF 2014 go. Well, karon, napabahay PDAF sa 2015 ang budget. Ugnayan PDAF sa 2015 budget. Karon sa 2015 budget, ano na pabahay PDAF? Ang pabahay porky-porky. Oo. Last summer, ibalo mo sa budget process, and the process of, now you understand why I'm sitting on my throne. Ikaw mo rin ba maglingkod? And then, during the budget preparation of the 2015 budget, it starts the first quarter, well up to April, May. And then it is submitted to the President in July, in time for his State of the Nation address. Now, sometime between January and July, the Speaker of the House requested his congressman, maybe including your congressman, I would not know, to submit their requests for porky-porky. Pero walay letterhead. Listahan ng mga projects. Unya, pilay cost, asa allocate, kalsada, school, scholarship, bridges, clinic, etc., which will submitted directly to the agencies. So these were directly integrated into the budget of the executing agencies. Pero 5 rapod ni. 5 lang ka agencies mo gisubitan ni. The same agencies nga gibalhinan sa 2014 pork. This would be DPWH, this is DOLE, this is DepEd, CHED, and so on and so forth. So, same. And so you say, what is the difference? Anong pagkakaiba? Karoon na naman sa agencies. And I think, for a while, I thought this was also a good thing. The trouble is, kining sa CHED pa ng lite, nakibalhin nga 4 billion. when I put it in my Facebook, kamura ba mag-Facebook? Ako, hindi ko ba ako mag-Facebook? Bisa gaya na akong pudlo. Yan ang, Twitter po. Vlog po. Kaya taga akong giingon nga CHED got 4 billion in 2014 and it's going to get the same amount or even more in 2015. When I announced it, one parent wrote me and said, "Ma'am, with the Canada Scholarship Program si CHED, duha ba akong anak kong graduate from high school?" Ingon siya, "May na kaya rin makakuha may scholarship. Please find out how to get the scholarships." So I called up a commissioner who is a friend of mine. How will, for example, the average parent apply for a scholarship from CHED? What are the rules, etc., etc.? Gingnan mo ko niya, "Ma'am, naka-reserve na ba na sa mga congressmen and senators? So the addition is reserved for them." So it's still work. Because it's still the congressman, it's still the senator who is making the decision. And the Supreme Court itself said that the legislature should have no part in deciding the projects or in the implementation of the projects. So, ang 2015, ako ba na akong siging sumong-sumong sa akong mga amigong congressman, i-calculate from certain congressman, o pila na karoon ang pork, no? Sa congressman nga, naana sa DPWH, nakareserba na ba, naana sa CHED, nga reserved for them. Dati, 17 million per congressman. Oo. If you have 17 million, what will you do with it? Individual yung kalawat ka. Ang 17 million, karon on the average, 90 million na per congressman. Oo. What have they done to deserve it? Why? Nga nung na 90 million man, tungod kay wa man ay hatag sa tanan ng congressman. You have at least 38 congressman na sabaan kayo. Sige yung panaway, sige yung complaint, sige point out. Sila may nag-reveal nga naday lista nga walay letterhead nga ipasubmit. Kaya usahay po ako po kay mahilig kong chika, maato ko sa Congress, pamati ko silang istorya. Hoy, remind mo ni Kuan, wa pa ni Speaker Belmonte, wa pa ninyo submit ang inyong mga listahan, ingon ana. So, there was such a list going on. Such lists which were submitted. So your question, and hopefully I have answered the question to Myong's satisfaction and the Research Council's satisfaction. Do we still have the draft in the 2014 and 2015 budget? Yes, but it is in a different form. Looking good na, bellified na, guwapa na kaayo. Oo. Instead of something evil looking at may sungayaw niya na ikaw, it's now beautiful. Mura nagsi Miss Porky na guwapa kaayo. Okay. Now your next question is, what is the status of DAP? Kining DAP, lahi ni sa DAP. Ang DAP, as I was saying, is in the Appropriations Act, but ang implementation, ang implementation sa projects, appeal ang legislature. Ang DAP is the so-called, the famous redefinition of savings. And this took effect in 2011, 2012, 2013, and finally was discontinued because it was going on for several years. Now, what is the status of that? All of you know already the story. It was declared unconstitutional to look at grounds or even for declarations of savings that does not comply with the statutory definition of savings in the General Appropriations Act, which is based on the Constitution. So, ang definition sa savings, lahi kay sa special provisions. That's the one reason. Ikaduha, kiningingon nga cross-border transfers. Kaya ang Constitution allows the executive, the president, to augment, to increase the budgets of his office, meaning the executive office, pero does not say that it can cross over, kan abang mag-jump over the backboard, ato ka dito lain, kuan nga branch of government. Because the DAP, a big part of DAP went to the Commission and Audit, over 100 million, to COMELEC, to Congress, gitagaan na po sila o parte sa DAP. And of course, part of it went to senators and congressmen, which is already forbidden in the decision against pork. So, pila ni kapilo ang iyang pagkatuan. So, kining crossover, it is a very important issue because the three branches of government are declared to be co-equal and independent branches of government. Ang ikaupat, kini di gini ma-deny. Di gini ma-deny, lisod kaya naman justify because ang circular sa budget, which is Circular 541, and which Leong has already cited, nag-ingon nga projects, activities, and programs nga dili covered sa appropriation can be funded from DAP. Sa ito pa, wala sa appropriation tax. This is the biggest, I mean, I don't know. All of these are equal sins. Pero I don't know which one is the venial sin and the mortal sin. Now, let the lawyers decide that. But kini nga wala sa appropriation, this is a fundamental violation of not only the law but also the Constitution. Because the Constitution is very clear, you cannot spend without the corresponding appropriation. Pero kini projects, activities, and programs not covered. Ang excuse, and I was there because I'm one of the petitioners, ang iingon lang nila, it was a typographical error. Oo, it was a typographical error. Dahil po na nga, karoon ang 2015 budget, do you know how many pages of errata ang isubmit? Sa 2015 budget, up 2015, second reading, over 100 pages of errata. You are all, good number of you are from academic communities. Musabot po mo 100 pages of errata in one document. Wala na po naglibro ng errata. Anyway, i-void pa po sa Supreme Court ang mga paggamit na may fund, na yan program fund ang government, which is, for 2015, it is 123 billion. Mali po mo sa kadaghan sa kwarta sa atong gobyerno. Tingnan mo, nanigigan. Bali naghan ng kwarta. Yung ano may naabot na to, no? Ano man takapartihin. I-void sa Supreme Court ang use ang program funds because you can only use the program funds if and when your collection, your revenue collection exceeds your estimated collection. That is also very clear. Unya, kay niingon lagi si Justice Carpio sa Supreme Court, since when ba man dako ang atong collection kaysa atong gasto? Nga naman nga natay deficit. Nga naman nga dako ang atong utang kung mo-exceed ta, no? Tapos, walay certification that is also required by the GAA. Kinahanglan mo certify ang Treasurer of the Philippines nga hallelujah, praise the Lord, a miracle has occurred. We have collected more than we have spent. So now, what is the status of that? I think you know the story. There were impeachment complaints which were filed. Nothing happened. Nothing happened because Congress shut it down. The Senate started hearings. Nothing happened also because I don't know what the reason is, but of course they all justified it. An motion for reconsideration has been filed by the President in the Supreme Court. In the meantime, the petitioners also commented on the motion for reconsideration, change nila ang definition. Now let us go to the interesting part, which was asked of me this morning during the press conference. No? Usang argument which has been repeated and which of course has some value is the President does not steal. And that was also raised to me. The President is known to be honest, does not need to steal, etc. But no one is accusing him of stealing. No one is accusing him of being corrupt. He is being accused of allowing the disobedience to the Constitution and of allowing a circular which he himself signed, the release. Because the DAP, all the releases from DAP have to be approved by the President, which is fundamentally unconstitutional. No one is accusing him of stealing it. So that's one. Second, I would like to cite the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, RA 3019. Nagaingon, entering on behalf of the government into a contract or transaction manifestly and grossly disadvantageous to the same, whether or not the public officer profited or not, still constitutes corrupt practice. And this law is very, very old, 1960s pa rin. And it is also, I understand, it is also a criminal code. You don't have to benefit personally. If you allow something knowingly, you allow something which is disadvantageous to God. I think we in government have to be aware of this because not many of us are aware of this provision, that you can be vulnerable to charges of corruption. Now, another defense is katong Administrative Order 127. This is the Marcosian decree, no? With the decree on budgeting, which was converted by Cory Aquino into Administrative Order 127. The Supreme Court devoted several pages to this administrative order, and the Supreme Court very clearly said that this is already rendered moot and academic because the 1987 Constitution prohibits it. So wala na na-enforcing particular provision of Administrative Order 127. And by the way, ang basis sa Administrative Order 127 is the presidential decree of the late President Marcos. Because when the new president, this is President Cory Aquino, came into office, she started, remember, the Marcosification? Daghan siya decree nga giuso. Pero this one, it was transplanted, lock, stock, and barrel. And you know this because the provision also of the automatic appropriation of debt is here and made into Cory's Administrative Order 127. This was the time na wala pa yung Constitution, by Freedom Constitution naman. By the time na niabot si Freedom Constitution, si atong 1987 Constitution, na rendered na ni as repealed na ni siya considered repealed. Another very, very interesting, and I noticed that there are students of business here and faculty, I suppose, is that ngayon sila, ikaw kung liling, tagaw na ito ng presidente o kuan, flexibility. Kung ayaw nila na tanan kita mag-vote, sundo ng batas, di na siya kalihok. Nya, kung na yung mga emergency, etc., kasi flexibility. I had a very long debate on Facebook with a former student of Siliman and then Ateneo. And ang among gilalisan about the flexibility. Now, in his own office, he has 2.79 billion available intelligence fund. Ang yan special purpose fund is 382 billion 2015. His program fund is 123 billion, and these funds cannot be spent without his consent and without his signature. The special purpose funds alone constitute 20% of the appropriation budget. Now, those of you who are from the private sector, I also sit in corporations, some boards. Who is the board which will allow its president to have full control of 20% of the budget? If you give flexibility, you have contingency fund, you have whatever, no? Pero dili po 20% sa tibuok nga national expenditure program. Totalo na nimo 500 billion plus his office Yan na ako po direct remittances na dili mo agi sa budget. And this is the remittance of PAGCOR which can amount to about 10 billion a year. Now I can see from your faces, feeling rich mo, no? Pagkadaghan na people's money. Pag-ihap ng trillion, billion, nga, controlled by our government officials. Nga kita, naman ito, umuwan ang 500 pesos, pwede na natin muulan, di ba? Yeah. So what I'm saying is he has a great deal of flexibility already. You don't need additional flexibility because he has a special purpose fund. And this is why we want the special purpose fund to be reduced further. Because the minute you give flexibility, then you also give opportunity. And the president is not the only one handling or managing the government. I mean, he also has other officials with him. Kini pong usa, this will have interest to the students of economics and of business. Kanina gi-bring up po sa press con. That po no, benefited the economy. So the end justifies the means. Okay lang, may man ang resulta. Now, what is the principle of DAP? Unsay mechanism sa DAP? Ang gihimo sa DAP, magkuha siya og mga allocations gikan sa different agencies niya ang giipon, gihimo niya nga DAP. Unya, ibalik na po sa lain nga mga agencies, ihatag sa mga senators from 100 million down to 50 million, and you all know that because it came out in the news. Gihatag sa mga congressmen, gihatag sa constitutional bodies. I mean mo, well, this is very good. Yeah, gihatag po sa mga barangays, etc. through the congressmen. Unya, that is helpful to the economy. Let me tell you, when, for example, a senator says, "Oy, I received 100 million, but I did not know where it came from, pero ingon akong savings akong ginawat." Nya naka-build man kog dako kaayong building, no? Justice building. So, wala nawala sa gobyerno. Naka-add na sa GDP sa gobyerno. But for every centavo which was spent out of that, for example, for every 100 million project, 50 million, 10 million project, which was spent from that, somewhere in some opposition place, a province has lost a bridge, a town has lost a school building, a district has lost a hospital, etc. Because you are dealing with the same amount of the budget. The law says that you cannot add to the budget. So it's the same amount. It's a zero-sum game. Naka-add ka sa GDP with your projects. Granting nga naka-add sa GDP kining bagong projects, but there's a great deal of question about it because a significant part, and you should read the PCIJ study. I brought a maleta of materials na ang PCIJ studies, trace nila na tanan og asa na adto. You can see nga na mix na may na dili man tanan na adto sa development. And even if you admit that 144 billion went to the improvement of the economy, you also lost 144 billion worth of projects which were cancelled. Diba? It's actually very simple. They are only looking at one side of what the DAP supposedly. And the second argument which I would place is the process of distributing the DAP was not democratic. Because it was the executive who decided to whom it should be given. Wala may labot ang Congress. Congress did not even know. All of them are saying they did not know. Congress said, wa sila kalibutan, gidawat nila itong gihatag nila para build og library, electronic library. Gidawat sa COMELEC ang gihatag nila. Gidawat sa COA ang gihatag nila para sa cars, electronic equipment, etc. etc. Gidawat po sa mga congressman at mga senators, pero silang tanan, wow, yun sila kabilong iigilan. And I think this is where educational institutions can come in, and this is where faith institutions can come in. Because when I say that in public, how can it be, you have how many 100 recipients of DAP, wag yun nakabilong iigilan to. And even in the Department of Budget and Management itself, not everybody knew where it went or where it came from. This is why it's so difficult to establish accountability. And the lesson for us is, sige mo kung yaw-yawan sa TV, you know that. Then, complete stranger ko na nga, I was going to the hospital, di na nakakita na ko, "Ma'am, ano naman?" Yung ko, okay, alam niya, "Ikaw, sobra ko di mo ka-stricto." Yan siya. Kung ako di ay, wala ay stranger, muhatag na ko, isa 1,000 na, isa 5,000 lang. Ya, mutala pa ba kung di na kuha? Di ako rapong dawaton. So mo na pag-iingon sa senator, na inahatag, ihatagaan mo 100 million, mangutana pa ba ko? O sa ka gusto nga mag-presidente, itagaan sa 99 million, mangutana pa ba ko? And maybe this is something which we can teach. Now, we should look at the hand which is trying to feed us. We should look at the gift horse in the mouth. And if you are especially in charge of accountability, will you not wonder if you receive 100 million out from the sky? In fairness to COA returned and spent portions when they learned na this is hot money man BI. So, I hope unsa man yung mga big tickets item gamitan sa tatak, no? Pag anda mo sa inyong notebook wala ba i-test mo sa inyong mga maestro. Ang equity infusion sa Bangko Sentral 30 billion. Anong kuhaon man sa DAP? It should be from the regular appropriations. Kaya yun sila nga kinahanglan o additional capital ang Bangko Sentral, make it part of the general appropriations. You have to get it from something which is very questionable, no? Upgrading mo man sila. Kaya I'm just answering mo, may ben, hitabo, kaya gihatag man na mo, ihatagan mo 30 billion ng Central Bank. But Bangko Sentral, ihatag niya mo na sa Bangko Sentral, that will not create jobs. It will not increase the GDP because it's just part of their capitalization which they're holding to make it strong, no? Di mo po na nila, it does not create jobs at all. Hindi ka nga ni-increase sa economy. O yan, ang usap argument, Philippine Health Center, Children's Medical Center, Lung Center of the Philippines, 742 million tanan. And I agree that they should receive it, but it should be in the General Appropriations Act. Because rightfully, we have to support these institutions. Many people from Mindanao go to these tertiary institutions, these specialist institutions, nga ginahanglan. Pero it should be in the DOH budget. I know it is part of the DOH budget. Nga naman nga gilain ka na sila. Unya, ang cross-border, yung 141 million for COA, IT, litigation experts, cars, etc. Nagiuli ang unspent e-library of Congress, IT equipment for COMELEC. Additional for ARMM, 8.6 billion pesos. For the Riera People's Liberation Army, 1.5 billion pesos. Wala sa appropriation. MNLF, left hand, right hand, 1.8 billion pesos ikat sa DAP. But these are part of regular activities. Nga naman nga, you have to go to something unconstitutional. So for me, there are 116 projects at the cost of 144 billion. Atong pangutanon, what are the status of these projects? Naon sa bani, nabay ng tindog, nagamit bani, naanol na mas baha, natumba na ba, hindi na kaya. Have these projects been audited? It's not clear because we are demanding for an audit report on the DAP itself. The last time special purpose funds were audited, the special purpose funds of the President, was during the time of GMA. This was in 2009, and the transactions were as of 2008. The last time PDAF was audited by COA, this was sometime in 2012, 2013, covered also 2009. And this was a follow-up audit. This is where you get your list already of recipients. So I was saying, if we spent 144 billion from different sources, we did not increase the budget actually. This is not 144 billion pesos more. This was 144 billion taken from projects. And what is interesting for me, kasi sabi ko, for every project undertaken for DAP, another project was given up, or other projects. Oh, I can see from your faces nga gets na gets ninyo. I cannot understand why dili nila mag-gets. Insist yun sila nga dako ang increase sa development sa economy. No? For the use, for the selection of how were the eliminated projects selected? And I think, for those, you have a research council, although lisod lang kaya kayo kuha ng data, inyong i-verify, kasi we are auditing the projects funded by DAP, di ba? Atong tan-awon, what were the projects given up? for that, which should equal also the cost of the 116 projects. And then you can tell by looking at the location, sa Bani, sa Leyte Bani, kasi there was a project for an airport, mga 400 million, gi-cancel man. Ibutang sa Tacloban Airport. This was pre-Yolanda. And this is the best known na kuan. So you have to look also at those which were given up as a research area. Next question. Did the DBM and President need to create that? This is also very important. Take note. This is asked me for several times. Ang defense sa DBM sa Senate is that, well, si Adam, no? Di ba si Adam, nadakpan siya ni kuan ni God na ang kaon si Ibangod. O niya, si Ibog, kasaban, si serpent manggod. Nga kasi may basulo ni serpent. Oo. Nga, you pass on the blame. Yung silang, everybody did it man, nga, why should we blame for it now? Nga, it had been done before. Now, we looked into this very carefully. Kaya iside nila pananglitan, si President Cory, the mother of the President. President Cory created a control reserve fund. I think you have to be listen very carefully. It is true she created a reserve fund, but during her time, this was the time of the debt crisis. Walay kwarta ang gobyerno, dako kayong utang, kulang ang budget. So she had a reserve fund where kada release sa mga agencies, muputang sa certain percentage into that reserve fund. So what was she doing? She was limiting expenditures. She was holding, practically impounding expenditures. But what is that doing? It is releasing money into the economy, which is completely different. Now, let us go to President Ramos. Si President Ramos naman, naabtan sa Asian financial crisis. And I was teaching public fiscal administration at the time na nag-series na siya, it did impoundment. Kaya ang savings nga, ang reserve savings start ni Cory, 5% lang of the budget should be reserved. You know, he increased it every how many months? 5, himong 10, hangtod niya about 25% of the budgets of certain agencies. What niya release? Again, it was an expenditure control. And you say, you ask, was it legal or was it unconstitutional? The Constitution allows, and again, listen very carefully, the Constitution allows impoundment in case of an impending fiscal crisis. At that time, the Asian fiscal crisis, naigo yun si President Ramos, niya nasundan ni President Estrada. Ang end sa fiscal crisis. So, you can see, ang himo ni Ramos was constitutional. Inaman impending fiscal crisis. No? So, then you have Arab. Arab's term was too short for him to have that kind of problem. He had other kinds of problems. He did not have to deal with this kind of problem in itself. Now, let's go to GMA. Not many of us are fans of GMA, of course, including a lot of people, maybe including myself, because I'm very critical also of the GMA administration. But what did GMA do? Remember, all of those of you who were already born during the time of GMA, she created a stimulus fund. Exactly the same objective, to stimulate the economy, because government was underspending. Exactly the same. But when did she do it? She did it during the appropriations period, the amendment. At the time when congressmen were still debating about the budget. Ang himo niya, gi-reduce niya ang debt service. Ikuha niya ang mga pondo sa government corporations. She did not touch the budgets of the agencies. Ang government corporations, ang iyang ipanguhaan o kwarta, gihimo niya ang stimulus fund. She did it during the appropriations process and made it part of the appropriations law. So it was before the passage of the appropriation law. So, bisag sigit, bugot-buganan ng tao, kaya wala man sila nga sa appropriation law katong stimulus fund. You know, ano, kasi I was prepared to say, boy, GMA did it, Pinoy and GMA did it, pareho silang luma. But then when we looked at the record and I traced it, she did it during the appropriations process, kining stimulus fund. Kaya ang counting good ani is after. Ang gihimo sa DAP, na-pass ng appropriations law, gi-action na sa Kongreso. No? Unya, ibag-o. So you are changing the decision of Congress. So I would go on with the rest of the arguments on DAP because I believe there are alternatives to DAP. You don't have to declare DAP alone. This today, in a few, saan bang oras aro? 3:15. By 4 o'clock, Congress will meet to approve on third and final reading of the General Appropriations Act for 2015. Now, in the General Appropriations Act of 2015 are the special provisions which contain a redefinition of what savings is. Kaya niingon man ang Korte Suprema nga wala sa timing ang pag-declare sa savings, etc., etc., wa mo sunod sa definition. So they did a very simple change. They changed the definition of savings. And they did it so subtly. This was on the proposal of the DBM, and I saw the communications asking Congress to put it in, and they put it in. Also, ibutangan lang pag-declare of savings at any time. Also, may yung understanding of savings from a personal level. Di ba usually, o namin project, hindi mo balay, palit mo bisikleta, o invest mo tricycle, etc. Kung dili mahurot ng inyong budget niya na, muna yung savings. Muna nga, kung ano mag-celebrate mo. That's how you usually define savings. Or every day, a part of the money, you underspend on certain things. And the General Appropriations Act is very specific on what savings is. Ibago lang na nila. So now, if Congress at this time, kasi ilang dalihon, because we have up to October 30 to approve, on third and final reading, the 2015 budget, they will have legitimized that. And your answer, Your Honor, is yes. If the 2015 budget will be approved as is, where is, that will be legitimized. And since that is spent also for pork, as what was done before, give it to congressmen, etc., then we will even legitimize pork at the same time. Are the congressmen aware of it? When I called their attention to it, they said, oh, mao ba? Naabay yun ang commission? It is in section 67 to 69 of the special provisions. And they are going to debate it in just a few minutes. And I'm very happy that I was invited so that I could brief you on what is happening now in your servants' quarters. You know, occasionally it is good to keep an eye on what our servants do, especially if we entrust our money to our servants 100%. So we'll stop at this point so that those who will have reactions can make the reactions and ask questions. And I will continue later.